Captain Alina Voss stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Horizon, watching the massive alien vessel grow larger on the main screen. It had appeared 3 days ago, dropping out of nowhere near the edge of the solar system. No warning, no request to talk first. It simply showed up, a ship the size of a small moon, and started broadcasting on every frequency humans used. The message was the same every time: surrender, submit to the Galaxy Council, accept a new ruler from the stars. Alina had read the words so many times she could say them without looking at the screen. But she still felt a small chill each time the alien voice spoke them again, calm and certain, like a teacher talking to a child who had no choice in the matter. She was 41 years old, with short dark hair and eyes that did not move away from problems. She had spent 20 years in the Navy before moving to Space Command, and in that time she had learned one important truth: panic never won a fight. Thinking clearly did. Behind her, the bridge was full of quiet sounds. Officers typed at their stations. Screens showed data flowing in from sensors all over the system. Daniel Reyes sat at the tactical station, his eyes fixed on a stream of numbers most people would find boring. Daniel was not a man who smiled much, but he was the best at noticing small details that mattered. He had been with Alina for 6 years, ever since the early days of the Joint Earth Defense Program. "They've sent another message," Daniel said, his voice level. "Same words: surrender within 7 days or face full force." "How many times is that now?" Alina asked. 11. They like repeating themselves. They expect us to be scared into saying yes. Alina turned from the screen and looked at the wall map of the solar system. A red marker showed the alien ship's position near Jupiter. It had not moved. It did not need to move. It was simply waiting, like a large animal sure that its prey had nowhere to run. "Get me a line to the council ship," she said. "I want to answer this myself." The communications officer, a young woman named Priya, looked up in surprise. "Captain, the council only talks to government leaders. They've ignored every offer from our diplomats." "Then maybe it's time they hear from someone who isn't asking for permission," Alina said. 3 days earlier, when the alien ship first arrived, the governments of Earth had tried everything. They sent polite messages. They sent confused messages. They sent long explanations about human history and human rights. None of it mattered. The Council's reply was always the same demand, word for word, like a machine that could not be reasoned with. Alina had watched all of this from the command center deep under the mountains of Colorado, where Earth's Joint Defense Program had been built in secret over the last 15 years. Few people knew how much had been done down there. Even fewer knew how close Earth was to being ready for a moment exactly like this one. "Captain," Priya said, "I have a channel, it's open." Alina straightened her uniform jacket and stepped toward the main screen. The alien leader appeared, a tall being with pale gray skin and eyes that glowed faintly blue. He wore deep purple robes covered in small silver patterns that seemed to move on their own. This was High Speaker Valorn, leader of the Council delegation, a being who had spoken to hundreds of worlds before Earth and had never once heard the word no. "I was told a human captain wished to speak," Valorn said. His voice was smooth, almost gentle, the voice of someone who believed he had already won. "How unusual. Your leaders have been quite talkative, yet none of you understand the position you are in." "I understand it well," Alina said. "You want us to surrender." "It is not a want," Valorn said. "It is simply what will happen. The Galaxy Council has welcomed many young species into its order. Some resisted at first. All eventually saw reason. I would rather not waste time on a show of force, but if your species insists, we are prepared to demonstrate exactly how small your world truly is." Alina did not answer right away. She let the silence sit there for a moment, long enough that even Valorn's calm expression flickered slightly with confusion. Then she spoke, her voice steady and clear. "We will attack." For a moment, nobody on the bridge moved. Daniel's hands paused over his console. Priya's eyes went wide. Even the quiet hum of the ship system seemed to grow louder in the silence that followed. On the screen, Valorn's glowing eyes narrowed. He let out a short sound that might have been a laugh or might have been surprise. "You will attack," he repeated slowly, as if testing the words to see if they made any more sense the second time. "A species that has not yet left its own star system. A species with no fleet capable of facing even one of our smaller vessels. You say you will attack us." "That's right," Alina said. "This is not bravery," Valorn said. "This is foolishness. I had hoped to avoid unnecessary harm to your people, but if this is your answer, then perhaps a smaller demonstration is needed before your full surrender. 7 days, Captain. The offer remains. Use them wisely." The screen went dark as the connection ended. For several seconds, nobody on the bridge spoke. Then Daniel let out a long breath and looked over at Alina. "That wasn't part of the plan we discussed," he said. "No," Alina admitted, "but it felt right. They're going to come at us now, maybe sooner than 7 days." "I'm counting on it." Daniel studied her face for a moment, the way he always did when he was trying to understand a decision before judging it. Then a small, rare smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You wanted them to come early," he said, "before they're fully ready, before they've studied us properly." "Anger makes people careless," Alina said. "Even alien ones, it seems." Far below the bridge, in a section of the ship most crew members were not allowed to enter, Marcus Holt was running diagnostic checks on a piece of technology that did not officially exist according to any public record. Marcus was an engineer, broad-shouldered and quiet, the kind of man who trusted machines more than speeches. He had spent the last decade building something Earth's enemies did not know about, a disruptor field designed to scramble alien shields and communication systems at close range. It had taken years of failed tests and quiet funding hidden inside dozens of unrelated government projects. Most of the people working on it didn't know the full picture. Only a small circle, including Alina, Daniel, and a handful of trusted officers, understood exactly what waited in the lower decks of 3 hidden defense stations scattered around Earth's solar system. Marcus's communicator buzzed. It was Alina. "You heard?" she asked. "The whole ship heard," Marcus said. "We will attack. That's going to be in every history book if this works." "It has to work." "It will," Marcus said. "But they're going to come hard now. Probably send a smaller fleet first to teach us a lesson before the deadline." "That's exactly what I'm hoping for," Alina said. Marcus paused, looking at the calm, steady readings on his control panel. The disruptor field had never been tested against a real council ship. Only simulations. Only guesses based on intercepted data and stolen signal patterns Daniel had picked up over the years. "We get one good shot at surprise," Marcus said. "After that, they'll know what we have." "Then we make the first shot count," Alina said. Up on the bridge, Alina stood quietly, watching the red marker near Jupiter that had not yet moved. Somewhere out there, a being who had never lost an argument with a younger species was deciding how to punish a small, stubborn planet for daring to say no. Alina did not feel afraid. She felt something closer to readiness, the same calm she had felt before difficult missions in her younger years, when the outcome was uncertain but the plan was sound. She thought about humanity's long history, full of moments where people had been told they could not win, and had found ways to win anyway, not through size or strength, but through patience, planning, and the refusal to give up before the fight had truly started. "Daniel," she said quietly, "how long until they move?" Daniel checked his screen, watching small shifts in the alien ship's power readings. "If their pattern holds, they'll send a smaller fleet within the next 2 days, enough to scare us, not enough to risk their full force." "Good," Alina said. "Let's make sure we're ready for them before they think we are." Outside the ship's window, Earth turned slowly below them, blue and green and unaware of how close it stood to either disaster or a victory nobody, would have believed possible a week earlier. Elena watched it for a long moment, then turned back to her crew, ready to begin the quiet, careful work of preparing for a war the Galaxy Council did not yet understand they were about to lose. 2 days passed since Captain Voss gave her answer to High Speaker Valorn, and the mood across Earth's defense network had shifted from fear into something sharper and more focused. News of "We will attack" had leaked out within hours, despite every attempt to keep it quiet. People argued about it in every corner of the planet. Some called Elena reckless, others called her brave, most simply waited to see what would happen next, holding their breath as the deadline crept closer. Inside the command center, buried deep beneath the Colorado mountains, none of that noise mattered. Down there, the only thing that mattered was preparation. Elena sat in a small briefing room with Daniel Reyes across the table from her. A large screen on the wall showed slow-moving graphs and charts, data the public would never see. Daniel had a cup of cold coffee beside him that he had forgotten to drink an hour ago. "Let's go over it again," Elena said, "from the start so I know we haven't missed anything." Daniel nodded and pulled up a timeline on the screen. 20 years ago, after the first deep space telescopes picked up unusual signals near the edge of our system, a small group of scientists and military leaders realized we weren't alone, and that whoever was out there had technology far beyond ours. They kept it quiet, formed a joint command between major nations, something the public was never told the full truth about. "The Unified Earth Defense Initiative," Elena said. "Right, at first it was just information gathering, listening, learning their language patterns, their fleet movements, anything we could find. Then, about 15 years ago, we got lucky." "The damaged scout ship," Elena said. Daniel nodded again. A small Council scout ship suffered some kind of system failure and crash-landed in the Pacific. Most of it was destroyed, but enough survived for our engineers to study. That's when Marcus and his team really got to work. Elena remembered that day well, though she had only been a junior officer back then. The wreck had been kept secret from almost everyone, hidden under cover stories about a weather research accident. The technology inside had been decades ahead of anything humans had built, yet it wasn't impossible to understand. It was simply different, built on principles Earth scientists hadn't yet explored. "It gave us a place to start," Daniel said. "We couldn't copy their technology completely. We didn't have the resources or the time, but we found weaknesses, patterns in how their systems worked, and Marcus found a way to use those weaknesses against them." "The disruptor field," Elena said. "Exactly." The door to the briefing room slid open, and Marcus Holt walked in, looking tired but alert. He carried a small data tablet under one arm and dropped into the chair beside Daniel without much ceremony. "You wanted the full picture," Marcus said. "Here it is." He set the tablet on the table, and the wall screen changed to show a diagram of Earth's 3 hidden defense stations, scattered at different points in the solar system, disguised as research satellites and old mining equipment that no one would think twice about. "Each station carries a piece of the disruptor system," Marcus explained. "On their own, they don't do much, but when activated together in the right pattern, they create a field that scrambles any electronic signal passing through it. Shields drop, communications break down, even their navigation systems struggle to function properly." "And you're certain it'll work against their full ships, not just the scout we studied?" Elena asked. "Certain is a strong word," Marcus admitted. "We've run thousands of simulations based on the rec systems and on data Daniel managed to collect over the years. Every test points to yes, but it's never been tried against an actual full-size Council ship in real combat." "That's the risk we're taking," Elena said quietly. "That's the risk we've always known we'd have to take," Marcus said. "We always knew this day might come." Elena looked at the diagram on the screen, picturing the moment when the test would finally happen. Not in a lab, not in a simulation, but in the cold reality of open space, with human lives depending on every calculation being correct. "There's something else," Daniel said. I've been studying the signal patterns we intercepted during their broadcasts. I think I've found something useful. He brought up a new set of charts, showing wave patterns that meant little to anyone without specialized training, but clearly meant something important to him. Their ships rely heavily on a shared communication network, Daniel explained. Each ship doesn't operate alone. They constantly share targeting data, shield status, even tactical decisions, all linked together. It makes them incredibly coordinated, but it also makes them dependent on that connection. If we break the connection, Alina said, understanding immediately, they lose more than just shields. They lose coordination. Exactly, Daniel said. Each ship becomes more like an individual fighter instead of part of a perfectly synced unit. They're not trained to think that way. Every report we've gathered shows their pilots rely on the network for decisions, not independent judgment. And we're trained for exactly that kind of fighting, Alina said. Independent thinking under pressure. It's how every human pilot has been trained for decades, long before we even knew aliens existed. Marcus allowed himself a small, tired smile. So our greatest weakness, he said, humans being naturally divided, slow to organize, always arguing about everything, might actually be our advantage here. We're used to chaos. They're not. Alina thought about that for a long moment. It was a strange kind of comfort, knowing that humanity's habit of disagreement and independent thought, something often seen as a flaw, might become the very thing that confused an enemy used to perfect coordination. How soon can the stations be ready? She asked. They already are, Marcus said. We finished the final calibration last night. We just need the right moment to use them. Once we activate the disruptor field, the element of surprise is gone. They'll figure out what we did eventually, and they'll adapt. We get one clean shot at this before they understand what's happening. Then we make sure that shot lands when it matters most, Alina said. She stood and walked closer to the wall screen, looking at the planet on the smaller side panel, blue and quiet, still spinning the same way it always had before any of this began. Valorn expects us to either surrender or throw whatever weak defense we have directly at his main ship, she said. He's not expecting patience. He's not expecting us to wait for him to come to us. You think he'll send a smaller fleet first, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. He already knew her thinking well enough. I'm certain of it, Alina said. Beings like him don't risk their main forces on a species they see as beneath them. He'll send enough ships to humble us, to prove a point, while keeping his strongest ships in reserve in case things go wrong. It's exactly what a confident enemy does before realizing they've underestimated their opponent. And when that smaller fleet arrives, Marcus asked. We let them come close, Alina said. Close enough that they believe they're in full control. Close enough that running back home isn't a real option for them anymore. Then we use everything we have. The room fell quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed the weight of the plan, simple in its idea, but enormous in what it required. Discipline, patience, and the willingness to wait calmly while an enemy fleet advanced, trusting that the moment to strike would be clear when it came. There's one more thing, Daniel said quietly. Ambassador Kiri Thess, one of the smaller species in the Council, has been sending strange signals. Nothing official, just small data leaks, almost like she's testing if we're paying attention. What kind of data? Alina asked. Fleet movement schedules, internal Council communication frequencies, things she shouldn't be sharing if she supports Valorn's plan. Alina considered this carefully. Do you think she's trying to help us? I think, Daniel said slowly, she might be someone who's grown tired of watching the Council bully smaller worlds into submission. Maybe she's hoping we prove something different is possible. Keep watching those signals, Alina said. If she's offering anything useful, I want to know. Outside, beyond the thick mountain walls protecting the command center, the people of Earth continued their lives, unaware of just how close their world stood to either disaster or an unlikely victory. Inside, 3 quiet, determined people sat with the full weight of that future resting on careful plans and small advantages gathered from years of patient work. Alina looked at Daniel, then at Marcus, and felt a calm certainty settle over her, the same kind of certainty she had always trusted in difficult moments throughout her life. "They'll come within the next day or two," she said. "When they do, we'll be ready. Let's finish the preparations." The two men nodded, and together they returned to their work, knowing that the true test of everything they had built in secret over so many long years was finally about to begin. The Council fleet arrived sooner than anyone expected. Sensors at the outer edge of the solar system picked up the first signs less than 30 hours after Alina's call with High Speaker Valorn. 12 ships, smaller than the massive flagship but still far larger than anything Earth had ever built, dropped out of warp near the orbit of Mars. They moved in a tight, perfect formation, gray hulls catching the distant sunlight as they began their slow advance toward Earth. In the command center, alarms stayed quiet. Alina had ordered no panic signals, no loud warnings that might cause fear among the public before it was needed. Instead, the news moved only through trusted channels, straight to the people who needed to act. 12 ships, Daniel said, studying the data as it streamed in. Smaller class, not their best but more than enough to crush anything we've shown them so far. "Just like we expected," Alina said. "A lesson fleet, not a true war fleet." "They're confident," Marcus added from his station nearby. "Look at their formation. Tight, careless almost. They're not expecting resistance, just an easy demonstration." Alina watched the slow-moving dots on the main screen, each one representing a ship far more advanced than anything humanity could build through conventional means. And yet, she felt no fear, only the quiet focus of someone who had spent years preparing for exactly this moment. "Daniel, time until they reach engagement range." "At their current speed, about 6 hours." "Good," Alina said. "Plenty of time to make sure everyone's in position." Word went out across Earth's defense network. 3 carrier groups, hidden in different positions around the solar system, began moving slowly into place, careful not to draw attention. Their ships were smaller, faster, built more for speed and precision than raw power, since Earth had never had the resources to match the Council in size. Captain Voss had spent years training her pilots for exactly this kind of fight. Independent thinkers, quick decision makers, people who didn't need constant orders to know what to do. On board the Horizon, the bridge crew worked quietly and efficiently, each person aware of the importance of the next few hours. Priya monitored communications, watching for any new Council broadcasts. Daniel tracked the enemy fleet's movement with careful attention, while Marcus stayed in contact with the 3 hidden defense stations, making final checks on the disruptor system. 6 hours passed slowly, filled with tense waiting and constant small adjustments. As the Council fleet entered the outer edge of Earth's defense range, Alina gave the order. "All ships hold position. No offensive movement unless fired upon." The order confused some of the younger officers. Holding back, letting the enemy come closer without resistance, seemed against every instinct that told them to fight back immediately. But Alina had explained her reasoning carefully during the planning stages. The longer the Council ships advanced without facing resistance, the more confident and careless they would become, and the deeper they would move into the range of Earth's hidden disruptor stations. High Speaker Valorn watched the approach from the bridge of the Council flagship, still positioned safely near Jupiter. He observed through a smaller screen as his lesson fleet advanced unopposed. "No resistance," said one of his officers, a being with thin silver markings across pale skin. "They're allowing us full approach." "As expected," Valorn said, his voice carrying quiet satisfaction. "Their words were brave. Their actions show the truth. A frightened, disorganized species with no real plan." Ambassador Kiri Thes stood quietly near the back of the bridge, watching the same screen with far less certainty than Valorn displayed. She had read every report about Earth's strange behavior, the secret data leaks she had been quietly sending toward Earth over the past several weeks, hopping someone there would notice and use them wisely. They're allowing your fleet to approach without resistance, she said carefully. Doesn't that strike you as unusual, High Speaker? It strikes me as exactly what a desperate species does, Valorn replied. They hope for mercy by appearing harmless. Kiri said nothing more, though doubt continued to grow quietly within her. Back on Earth, the Council's lesson fleet continued its advance, moving steadily closer to the planet, completely unaware that with every passing minute, they were drawing deeper into a carefully designed trap. The 12 ships maintained their tight formation, confident that nothing waiting ahead could possibly challenge them. They're entering the inner activation zone, Marcus reported, watching the positions of the enemy fleet relative to the 3 hidden stations. Another 20 minutes and they'll be exactly where we need them. Alina nodded, watching the screen carefully. Daniel, status on their communication network. Still fully linked, Daniel said. Every ship sharing data constantly. Shields, targeting, navigation, everything's connected through their central system, just like we predicted. And our ships? In position, waiting for your signal. The minutes passed slowly, each one stretching longer than the last as the Council fleet moved closer to the precise center of the disruptor field's range. Alina watched the formation with careful, patient eyes, waiting for exactly the right moment. They're fully inside the activation zone, Marcus finally said, a slight edge of excitement breaking through his usual calm tone. Alina allowed herself one slow breath before giving the order that would change everything. Marcus, activate the disruptor field. All ships, prepare for immediate engagement. Marcus's hands moved quickly across his console, entering the final activation sequence. Far out in space, the 3 hidden stations, disguised for years as harmless mining equipment and research satellites, suddenly came alive with hidden power, sending out a precisely tuned field that spread silently across the area where the Council fleet floated in perfect, unsuspecting formation. For a brief moment, nothing visible happened. Then, across all 12 Council ships, lights flickered. Communication signals scattered into static. Shield generators struggled, flickered, and in several ships, failed completely. On the Council flagship, alarms suddenly blared. High Speaker, we've lost contact with the lesson fleet. Their communication network has collapsed. Valorn's calm expression shattered into confusion. That's not possible. Run a full diagnostic, now. But there was no time for diagnostics. In the chaos below, Earth's hidden fleet emerged from their positions around asteroids, behind moons, and from carefully disguised positions near old satellites. 12 Council ships, suddenly cut off from their shared network, found themselves alone for the first time in their long service, each pilot forced to make decisions without the constant guidance they had always relied upon. Confusion spread rapidly through the Council formation. Without their shared targeting system, individual ships struggled to track Earth's faster, more agile fighters who darted between them with practiced precision. Alina's pilots, trained for years in independent thinking and quick decisions, found themselves perfectly suited to fight against an enemy suddenly unable to coordinate. Status report, Valorn demanded from the flagship, watching helplessly as static filled most incoming reports. Multiple ships report shield failure, an officer replied, voice strained. Several engines reporting unexplained malfunctions. We're losing contact with half the fleet. Ambassador Kiri Thess watched silently, her earlier doubts now replaced by something close to amazement. Whatever the humans had done, it clearly wasn't desperation or panic. It was a plan, carefully built and perfectly executed. Down in the heart of the battle, Daniel Reyes watched the chaos unfold across his tactical display, calling out small adjustments to fleet positioning as Earth's ships exploited gaps in the enemy formation that wouldn't have existed an hour earlier. 3 Council ships breaking away, attempting independent retreat, Daniel reported. Looks like their training doesn't cover acting without central coordination. Then we make sure that confusion costs them. Alina said, watching from the horizon's bridge as her fleet moved with practiced precision through the disordered enemy formation. The battle, which the Council had expected to be a quick, humiliating lesson for a primitive species, had instead become a demonstration of something they had never encountered before. An enemy who understood patience, who valued careful planning over raw power, and who had quietly prepared for this exact moment long before the Council had ever arrived. As the fighting continued, Alina watched closely, aware that this was only the first stage of a much larger test. The lesson fleet was strong, but it was not the Council's true strength. Somewhere out there, Valorn's true forces remained untouched, watching, learning, and likely preparing a far more serious response once this humiliation became clear. But for now, in this moment, Earth's carefully built defenses were proving exactly what Alina had always believed: that intelligence, patience, and careful preparation could overcome even the largest gap in raw power. "Keep pushing," she said quietly to her crew. "Let's make sure they remember this day clearly." Battle around Earth had turned into something the Council had never imagined possible. What was supposed to be a quick demonstration of power had become a slow collapse of order among the 12 Lesson Fleet ships, each one now struggling alone without the shared network they had always depended on. On the bridge of the horizon, Alina watched the unfolding chaos with calm, careful eyes. The screens in front of her showed Earth's smaller, faster ships weaving between the larger Council vessels, striking at weak points before pulling away again, never staying still long enough to become an easy target. "3 more Council ships reporting engine failures," Daniel said, watching the data stream in. "Their systems weren't built to function without constant guidance from the network. They're making mistakes even simple pilots wouldn't make." "Keep tracking their movements," Alina said. "I want us ready the moment they try anything coordinated again." Marcus's voice came through on the comm link from the lower decks. "Disruptor field still holding steady, but I'm seeing some early signs of their systems trying to adapt. We might only have another hour before they figure out a workaround." "Then let's make this hour count," Alina said. Out in the open battlefield, Earth's pilots moved with practiced precision, executing maneuvers they had trained for years without ever knowing exactly when, or if, they would be needed. Fighter pilot Captain Renee Acaffer led one of the smaller strike groups, guiding her squadron through a narrow gap between 2 struggling Council ships. "They're not adjusting fast enough," Renee called out over the comm. "Keep hitting their weak points. Watch for any ship trying to regroup." Her squadron broke formation briefly, splitting into pairs to strike multiple targets at once, a tactic that would have seemed reckless against a fully coordinated fleet, but worked perfectly against ships now forced to think and react alone. On the Council flagship, High Speaker Valorn watched the disaster unfold with growing disbelief. Reports continued pouring in, each one worse than the last. 4 ships completely disabled, an officer reported, voice tight with tension. 2 more reporting critical shield failures. The rest are scattered, unable to re-establish full coordination. "This is impossible," Valorn said, his earlier confidence replaced by something closer to anger. "They are a young species. They should not have technology capable of this." "Apparently," Ambassador Kiri Thess said quietly from her position near the back of the bridge, "they found a way without needing the same technology we possess." Valorn turned sharply toward her. "You suspected something like this." "I suspected they were not as helpless as you believed," Kiri said. "Their silence after the warning, their lack of pleading, none of that matched a desperate species preparing only for surrender." Valorn said nothing, his attention returning to the chaos displayed on the screen before him. For the first time since arriving in Earth's system, doubt crept into his calm certainty. Back in the heart of the battle, Daniel noticed something on his tactical display that made him sit up straighter. "Captain, 2 of their ships are attempting to break away entirely. Looks like a retreat." Alina studied the data for a moment. "Let them go. We're not trying to destroy every ship. We're trying to prove a point." Understood, Daniel said, relaying the order to the fleet. This was an important part of Alina's plan, something she had discussed carefully with both Daniel and Marcus during the long nights of preparation. Earth wasn't fighting to wipe out the Council's forces completely. That would only invite a larger, more devastating response. Instead, the goal was to demonstrate strength and capability clearly enough that the Council would be forced to reconsider their assumptions about Earth, without escalating the conflict into something far worse. As two damaged Council ships pulled away from the battle, retreating slowly back toward the flagship's position, the remaining ships continued their disorganized struggle against Earth's coordinated, confident defenders. Captain, Marcus's voice came through again, slightly strained now. I'm seeing early signs of their systems compensating for the disruptor field. We're losing effectiveness on 3 of the remaining ships. How long until they fully adapt? Alina asked. 15 minutes, maybe less. Alina considered this quickly. Daniel, focus our remaining strikes on the ships still affected by the field. Once they adapt, we pull back. No reason to risk unnecessary losses once we've made our point. Understood, Daniel said, already relaying new coordinates to the fleet. Earth's pilots responded immediately, concentrating their efforts on the remaining vulnerable ships while avoiding unnecessary engagement with those beginning to recover. Within minutes, 2 more Council ships found themselves disabled, their crews forced to abandon any hope of continuing the fight, while the rest of the fleet began slowly regaining partial control of their systems. As the 15-minute window approached its end, Alina gave the final order. All ships disengage, return to defensive positions, let them regroup and retreat. Earth's fighters pulled back smoothly, leaving the battered remains of the Council's lessened fleet scattered and struggling to reform. Of the original 12 ships, only 7 remained capable of independent flight, and even those showed clear signs of damage and confusion. On the flagship, Valorn watched the retreat of his battered fleet with a mixture of anger and growing unease. Order them back to the flagship immediately, he said, his voice tight with controlled frustration. And prepare a full report on what just happened. I want to know exactly what technology they used. Yes, High Speaker, an officer replied quickly, moving to follow the order. Kiri Thess remained quiet, watching the retreating ships with careful interest. She had spent years observing how the Council treated newly discovered species, always assuming size and technology alone determined power. What she had just witnessed challenged everything she had been taught to believe. Back on Earth, in the deep command center beneath the Colorado mountains, the mood had shifted from tense anticipation to careful, quiet relief. Alina stood watching the final reports come in, confirming that Earth's fleet had suffered only minor damage, with no ships lost and only a handful of injuries among the crews. We did it, Priya said quietly, almost in disbelief. We did the first part, Alina corrected gently. Valorn won't stop here. If anything, this will make him more determined, not less. Daniel nodded in agreement. He'll want answers. He'll want to understand exactly how we did this before deciding what comes next. And once he understands, Marcus added, walking into the room with his tablet still in hand, the disruptor field becomes far less useful. We've shown our hand. They'll find ways to counter it before any larger engagement. Alina considered this carefully. She had known from the very beginning that this victory, however important, would only be the first step in a much longer and more difficult struggle. The Council's true strength remained untouched, watching, learning, and likely preparing a response far more serious than a simple lesson fleet. We bought ourselves time, she said finally. Time to prepare further, time to show the Council that Earth isn't an easy target, and most importantly, time to make them reconsider whether conquering us is worth the cost. What about the deadline? Priya asked. 7 days, we're already past day 3. They'll likely delay it, Daniel said. After what just happened, Valorn can't simply demand surrender again without losing credibility in front of the rest of the Council. That gives us room to work, Alina said. Marcus, how soon can we improve the disruptor field's design, something that adapts faster to their counters? I'll need time, Marcus admitted. But yes, it's possible. We learned a lot from how their systems reacted today. Then let's get started, Alina said. Whatever Valorn decides to do next, I want us ready before he makes his move. As the team began discussing the next steps, far above them in the depths of space, Ambassador Kiri Thess made a quiet decision of her own. She moved carefully to a private terminal aboard the flagship, away from prying eyes, and began composing a message, one that would never officially exist according to any council record. The message was short, simple, and carefully encoded, meant only for Earth's defense network to receive and understand. You have proven something important today. Not all of us wish to see your world destroyed. There are those within the council who believe true strength comes from wisdom, not conquest. Watch carefully. Valorn will not give up so easily, but know that you are not entirely without allies, even among the stars you have never met. She sent the message quietly, then returned to her position on the bridge, her expression carefully neutral, giving no sign of what she had just done. Back on Earth, as the message arrived through carefully monitored channels, Daniel looked up from his console with surprise clearly written across his face. "Captain, you need to see this." Alina walked over, reading the message carefully, considering its meaning and implications. "It seems," she said slowly, "we might have found an unexpected friend among our enemies." "Can we trust it?" Priya asked. "Trust is earned," Alina said, "but it's worth remembering. Not every voice from the council speaks with the same certainty as Valorn." As the team continued their preparations, fully aware that the true test of Earth's strength and resolve still lay ahead, a quiet sense of cautious hope began to settle over the command center. The kind of hope that came not from naive optimism, but from the simple, growing belief that Earth's quiet patience and careful planning might yet prove strong enough to face whatever the Galaxy Council decided to send next. 3 days passed after the battle near Earth's orbit, and the entire solar system seemed to hold its breath, waiting for whatever response High Speaker Valorn would choose next. In the command center beneath the Colorado Mountains, Alina Voss had barely slept, splitting her time between strategy meetings, fleet readiness checks, and careful study of the message Ambassador Kiri Thess had sent. "Any movement from the flagship?" Alina asked, walking into the main control room where Daniel had been monitoring sensor data through the night. "None," Daniel said, rubbing his tired eyes. "It's been sitting near Jupiter since the battle ended. No further broadcasts, no new ships arriving, just silence." "Silence isn't always good," Marcus said, entering with a fresh data report. "It could mean they're calling for reinforcements, or it could mean Valorn struggling to explain what happened to the rest of the council." "Maybe both," Alina said. She walked to the main screen, where a current image of the distant council flagship glowed quietly against the darkness of space. After the disaster of the Lesson Fleet, 7 battered ships had limped back to the larger vessel, carrying with them clear evidence that Earth was nothing like the primitive, defenseless species the Council had assumed. "What do we know about how the Council actually works?" Alina asked. "If Valorn has to answer for this failure, who does he answer to?" Daniel pulled up old data gathered from years of careful signal interception. "From what we've gathered, the Council operates as a group of representative species, each with influence based on military strength, technological advancement, or economic contribution. Valorn species hold significant power, but they're not unquestioned rulers. Other members, like Kiri Thess's species, hold smaller, though still meaningful, positions." "So if Valorn fails badly enough," Alina said slowly, "others within the Council might use that failure against him." "That's the theory," Daniel said. "Politics among the stars probably isn't so different from politics here." Before anyone could respond further, a soft alert sounded from the communication station. Priya, who had been quietly monitoring background frequencies, suddenly sat up straighter. "Captain, we're receiving an incoming transmission. It's not from the flagship's main broadcast system. It's on the same private channel as before. Kiri Thes, Alina said. Looks like it, Priya confirmed, already working to decode the signal. A moment later, the message appeared on the screen, written carefully, as if every word had been chosen with great caution. The High Speaker has requested an emergency council session, set to occur within the next 2 days. He intends to argue for a full invasion fleet, claiming Earth's recent victory was a fluke of unknown technology, easily countered once properly understood. Several council members remain skeptical of his judgment after this failure. This may be Earth's only opportunity to present its case directly, before war becomes unavoidable. Alina read the message twice, feeling the weight of its meaning settle clearly in her mind. She's giving us a chance, Marcus said quietly. A chance to speak for ourselves before this turns into something far worse. Can we even reach this council session? Daniel asked. We don't exactly have an ambassador trained in dealing with alien politics. No, Alina agreed. But we have something more valuable. We have proof that Earth is not an easy target, and we have someone willing to speak honestly about what that means. She looked at Daniel and Marcus, both watching her carefully, waiting for her decision. I'll go myself, Alina said. Captain, that's incredibly risky, Priya said immediately. If this is some kind of trap. It might be, Alina admitted. But if Kiri Thes is telling the truth, this could be the only chance to prevent a war we have no guarantee of winning a second time. We proved Earth could survive one battle. We can't promise the same against their true forces. The room fell silent for a moment, as the weight of her words settled over everyone present. I'm coming with you, Daniel said firmly. If you're walking into council politics, you'll need someone who understands strategy and patterns better than diplomacy. And I'll stay here, Marcus said, making sure Earth's defenses remain ready in case this really is a trap. Alina nodded slowly, grateful for the steady support of people she had trusted through years of careful preparation. Then let's send a message back. Tell Kiri Thes that Earth accepts the opportunity to speak before the council. 2 days later, aboard a small, specially prepared shuttle, Alina and Daniel approached the massive council flagship, escorted carefully under terms negotiated quietly through Kiri Thes's hidden channels. The ship that had once seemed an unstoppable symbol of alien power now simply looked enormous, gray, and strangely quiet as their small craft moved toward a designated docking bay. Inside, they were led through wide, silver corridors toward a large chamber where representatives from dozens of species waited, each one studying the two humans with open curiosity. Most had never seen a human in person before. Many had only heard reports describing Earth's people as weak, disorganized, and unprepared for the wider galaxy. High Speaker Valorn stood at the center of the chamber, his expression carefully controlled, though Alina could sense tension behind his calm demeanor. Ambassador Kiri Thes stood quietly to one side, offering only the smallest, most careful nod of acknowledgement as Alina and Daniel entered. Captain Voss, Valorn said, his voice steady but lacking the earlier confidence Alina remembered from their first conversation. You've come to argue for your species' continued independence, I assume. I've come to speak honestly, Alina said, her voice calm and clear, carrying easily through the large chamber. About who we are and what continued conflict would truly cost both our peoples. She paused, looking around at the gathered representatives before continuing. 3 days ago, you sent ships to teach my world a lesson. You expected an easy victory against a species you believed incapable of resistance. Instead, you found a planet willing to defend itself, not through size or overwhelming power, but through patience, careful planning, and quiet determination. Murmurs spread quietly through the chamber as translators worked to relay her words to dozens of different species. Earth is young, Alina continued. We have not traveled far beyond our own solar system. We do not possess fleets the size of yours, nor technology that rivals your most advanced creations. But we have something just as valuable: the ability to learn quickly, adapt under pressure, and remain calm even when facing forces far larger than ourselves. She let her words settle for a moment before continuing. A full invasion of Earth would come at a cost far greater than the Council expects. We have already shown that our defenses, though limited, are far from helpless. A larger force might eventually overwhelm us, but not without significant losses on your side as well, losses many of you may find difficult to justify, especially once it becomes clear that Earth poses no true threat to the wider galaxy. Valorn's expression remained tense, though several other council members exchanged quiet glances, clearly considering her words carefully. "What exactly are you proposing, Captain Voss?" asked one representative, an older being with deep green skin and slow, measured speech. "Peace," Alina said simply. "Not submission, not surrender, but genuine peaceful coexistence. Earth seeks no conflict with the Council. We ask only to be recognized as equals, capable of managing our own affairs, free to develop and grow as our own people see fit." "And if the Council refuses?" Valorn asked, a hint of his earlier arrogance returning briefly. "Then I imagine," Alina said evenly, "this conversation will simply repeat itself after the next battle, and the one after that, each time costing more lives on both sides, until even those most committed to conquest begin questioning whether Earth's submission is truly worth the price being paid." A long, heavy silence followed her words. Several council members spoke quietly among themselves, clearly weighing the implications of continued conflict against the alternative Alina had offered. Finally, Kiri Thes stepped forward, addressing the chamber directly for the first time. "I have observed Earth's actions closely since our arrival," she said. "Their restraint during the battle, choosing not to destroy ships they could have easily eliminated, speaks clearly of a species seeking peace, not conquest. I believe continued conflict serves only those who fear losing influence through diplomacy rather than war." Her words carried clear weight among several council members, who nodded slowly in quiet agreement. Valorn remained silent for a long moment, clearly aware that his earlier confidence had crumbled significantly in front of the gathered representatives. Finally, he spoke, his voice carefully measured. "The Council will consider Earth's proposal," he said. "A formal decision will be reached within the next several days." It wasn't a clear victory, not yet, but Alina recognized the careful shift in tone, the quiet acknowledgement that Earth could no longer be dismissed as an easy, primitive target. As the meeting ended and representatives slowly began leaving the chamber, Kiri Thes approached Alina and Daniel quietly. "You spoke well, Captain," she said. "Better than many seasoned diplomats I've witnessed in similar situations." "Thank you for the chance to speak at all," Alina said sincerely. "Without your message, none of this would have been possible." "Perhaps," Kiri said, "but the rest was entirely your own doing. Earth's actions, both in battle and here today, have shown the Council something they rarely encounter: a species willing to stand firm without resorting to needless cruelty." Days later, back on Earth, news finally arrived confirming the Council's decision: a temporary peace agreement, allowing Earth continued independence while formal negotiations regarding eventual Council membership began. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was far better than the war so many had feared. Standing once more on the bridge of the horizon, Alina looked out at the quiet stars surrounding her world, aware that this peace remained fragile, easily disrupted by future misunderstandings or renewed Council ambitions. "This isn't the end," Daniel said quietly beside her. "No," Alina agreed, "but it's a start, a chance for Earth to grow stronger, wiser, and better prepared for whatever comes next." Below them, Earth continued its slow, steady orbit, unaware of how close it had come to disaster, yet quietly stronger for having faced it. Alina watched it turn beneath her for a long, peaceful moment, then turn back to her crew, ready to begin the careful, patient work of building a future worthy of the courage Earth's people had shown when faced with an impossible choice.